Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Fast Paced Fundamentals with moi, Crystal Cabaret. I'm gonna actually hide myself because I'm just talking. I am like locked on planet. For those that know what is going on planet, we are having an anti-master takeover. So we're doing some stuff, but not everything is technically being done. So we are on World Building Essentials, which officially makes us halfway through all of the fast-paced fundamentals. I'm very excited. Um and for those that are excited about the ones that came before, just go back a couple videos and you'll be able to see everything we're talking about. Because last month we were talking about the hook, the difference between a story arc and a character arc, and the payoff of doing all of the things in the story. And it was a lot of fun. Ran a little long, but it was a lot of fun. So what are we going to do today? So again, 30-minute max instruction. I say this every month and we try to hit the goals, so we're not going to lollygag. But we try to be concise because all of these fundamentals can be found on Storyteller Planet. We're just trying to get to the heart and the weeds because life is busy, and it's nice to have someone who is just explaining it to you in a bite-sized manner with examples and then something you could take home at the end. So, the 5 W's of world building. I'm sure you have heard of them before. I remember when I was in elementary school, my mom gave me this little laminated card of the 5 W's and necessarily didn't really think that it was gonna, topple into my adult career. But the 5 W's of world building essentially are this: who is the story about? What is the story about? Where is the story taking place? When is the story taking place? And why is the story happening or being told? It sounds very simple, but I'm going to break each one down anyway, because I think that sometimes we'll take this and we'll run with it, and then we get lost in the weeds, and then we get very confused and discouraged. So let's break each one down. Who is this story about? So every story, even your actual life, always centers around a character, i.e., yourself. Um, you can have siblings and a whole cast of characters, and that would be considered your ensemble cast. But without you, your story would not be happening, if that makes sense. No one can live your story. So the same goes for your characters. There can be an entire cast of characters that everyone loves and everyone knows their name. Like if you think about ensemble casts like Avatar: The Last Airbender or Fairy Tale or My Hero Academia, they have a large cast of characters that you can name a lot of things that are happening, but you can actually pinpoint who the story is about. Sometimes we get it wrong about who the story is actually about because, our heart goes to our favorite characters. But at the same time, we know who the story is about, what lens the story is being told from, and it's very important that you know that in your story. When I was first writing, I didn't get that. I had an ensemble cast that I was trying to equally tell the story of like 6 different people. And it's very difficult if you're not concrete into what the main storyline is trying to get to. So I implore you to ask yourself when you are writing, either now or in the future, who is the one character that holds everything together and why do they hold it together? Like I said, you can only live your life for better or worse. And without you, that story would not be running. That story would not exist. So why does this story exist? What is the one character that ties everything together? Because without them, everything will fall apart. So, what is this story about? The plot. We have talked about the plot. Go back a couple videos and indulge in learning about the plot. But just in case you missed it, we're going to do our favorite exercise. And this works, I believe, with any story I firmly believe it works with any story, but prove me wrong in the comments. Um, there once was someone named blah 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 who lived in blah 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 town, and every day they would do blah 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 until something happened, and then they had to go do something until they had no choice but to do something else, and then they did something else, but then they did something else until finally they did the thing, and then the thing was over, and when they thought back on the thing they felt something about said thing. Now you can plug and play whatever story you'd like to fit into that, because I was going to think of something, but I said I was going to be concise today. And considering last video was like 45 minutes long, we are going to leave it at that. Plug and play your story into this. If it cannot fit into this, you are missing things in your plot. This is the essence of a beginning, a middle, and an end with some extra spicy beats in there. I know that a lot happens in a story, but if you cannot whittle it down to this, then you got too much going on, and you might have like a whole series crammed into one story. So, again, if you want to learn about the plot, go look at what week did we, what year, what month did we talk about plot? April. Go to April's video. We talked a lot about plot. I'm not going to go into that. Where is the story taking place? Now, this is a loaded question, and this is why it's one of the 5 W's of world building. You were going to wonder where all the crazy details came from in the world building ness of this video. Here it is. The senses are underrated. And you need to use all of them, not just your sight, not just the touch, but the smell, the taste. If you have, some other sense that is like otherworldly, throw it in there. There are different consistencies, I'm gonna say, to what you can hear. Like the crunch of snow is different than the crunch of chips. Like those kind of details bring you to wherever this story is taking place, and it will ground you. It could be something very small, like it in the sense of actors. When they are trying to get into character, people will go the extra mile to make details about the character for that specific performance or that specific showcase, to ground them into the character, especially if they're playing more than one character. Because something simple as this person always uses their left hand over their right when they're writing can really put an actor into the place of the character, because maybe they're right-handed in real life and this character is left-handed, so they have to think that way. So when you're creating your story, you don't necessarily have to go to that length, but some of these questions here, like what does the air smell like? What are 3 things you see around you when you're standing around your world? They're going to ground you into the perspective of your characters. And that is where you want the people that you're telling the story to be. Your viewers, your readers, you want them to stand in your world and say, oh yeah, of course I know that in the corner there's a sword there because the person that this room belongs to is a swordsman. The little details will surprise you in the long run when you are writing, and sometimes you might give a whole dissertation that you never use, and sometimes that whole dissertation ends up saving your whole manuscript. So when is the story taking place? And again, another loaded question of world building, because when is subjective. 2 ways of looking at this. When in the timeline of life and history does this story take place? Especially if you're writing something that is non-fictional and you have to stay true to history, whatever that may be. Or if it takes place in a real town that you could hop in your car or a plane or a train and get to today, and you need them details to be like spot on, snap the picture, yep, that's there. That's one way to look at that. When is the story taking place? But the other way, and this is also very important, is when in the timeline of your universe does this story take place? Especially if there are other stories that exist in said universe, if you're pulling like a Doctor Who or Star Wars, or I think at this point Harry Potter could even been thrown there, and the Hunger Games, where in the timeline are we of this world? Especially now I'm saying the Hunger Games, because you think about it, you have the one book that is focused on Haymitch, but before that, you have the other book that's focused on Snow that precedes the entire Hunger Games trilogy. So you need to know those details because notice people normally write their prequels backwards because when Susan Collins was writing Hunger Games, just book one, I don't think she really had thought that she was going to go as far as making two prequels and I believe a couple other side books. So I say that with great passion and vigor, not because I'm just some fangirl, even though I am, but as someone who is writing an entire universe, it is very, very important that you lock into the details and you use them as law. You're free to choose and tweak as necessary, but if you don't take the time and say, all right, this is what I'm attempting to plan out in this moment. And these are the details that I choose in this moment. If later on I decide to use said characters or said setting or whatever, this is it. Like you can obviously play around with it if it's like, this is the town in 1920 and this is the town in 2020. Very different. You can get away with some stuff. Obviously, things are expected to change, but hard and fast rules for yourself when world building. Make sure that you write down the most important details where you can find them. Because unless you really thoroughly enjoy reading your stuff over and over and over again to make sure you have every little nook and cranny of a detail down, or you have a really, really, really good memory, it will get to you. I'm not gonna lie. Especially like just a side story. When I decided to write It's Only for Forever, I knew I was taking a risk because that book is at the end of my universal timeline. There is so much I have yet to write that has not appeared yet, that comes before that book. And I always have to go back and reference it to make sure that I'm not stepping on the toes of what I've already written, because nothing is worse than an inconsistent plot line. Most important question I believe that you can ask is, why is this story happening or being told? Because if you're sitting here just talking about an event that no one cares about, why are we talking about it? You know? And also, there's some events that we think could be like whole trilogies could actually be taken care of in a scene if we're acting logically about it. So if we're acting illogically about something, why is it being told? Why are we elongating it to the eons? Because I'm not going to lie to you. There is a show I'm watching, and I am not going to name it because I think it's delightful. My husband doesn't think it's delightful. Either way, this storyline is one of those storylines that the protagonist is purposefully a ditz, purposefully innocent, and purposefully clueless. It will drive a logical person up the walls and make them want to run as far away from the show as possible. But if you suspend your belief and actually think about, okay, this person is just this sort of way, and all the situations that are happening to said person is glazing over them like oil and water, and it's just not like clicking in their brain, and life is just going on around them, for them. You just got to roll with it, you know what I mean? So when it comes to the story that you're telling, is that what you're doing? Are you entertaining a dumb character's wish to have everything they want and more, or are you actually putting them through the ringer? Are you putting them in a world that is going to challenge them to make sure that they grow as a character? I don't care what medium you're using. If your character does not grow from beginning to the end of the story, I hope there's a sequel or a really strong reason, like, it being a sitcom and we have to reset every single time the story's done. But there's a deeper question within that you may find. And that is, why are you, as the storyteller, working so hard to tell the story? Is there a message or something that you are trying to get out through this work? Then you need to focus on it. If there is it a passion? Is it a dream? Is it for fun? Like, whatever it is, nail it down early because it will be your reason why. And when you're storytelling, sometimes your reason why can get lost. In a lot of discussions that I've had about storytelling, the biggest thing that I will always say is landing on your why in the darkest times helps you springboard to the next idea or inspiration, because working off of nothing and turning around and being all lost and everything that you were trying to build can sometimes discourage you from actually wanting to finish. And our goal on Storyteller Planet is to make sure that you finish your stories. So whatever the reason that you were trying to tell this story or any story, establish it from the beginning and hold on to it really closely. So why are these five W's important if you kind of, didn't already get the gist of why they're important? Establishing the foundations of your world will make it easier to tell your story as you create it. The more details you add organically, the more life your story will have overall. Stay connected to your world at the base level, and the rest will come with time. And yes, I read that word for word because it is important and it is true. This is not by any means the entirety of what world building entails. You can spend years, honestly, decades even, trying to learn every facet of world building because at that point, you're just learning the world itself. And that is a lot. So if these five W's were kind of like, all right, well, that's cool and all, but I really wanted to learn like world building stuff. Oh, don't fret, my child. We got a few things. So we're going to go take a trip on planet, and I'm going to show you through focus mode how to get to where you want to go, because there's a few different ways. One is the storytelling fundamentals 101. If you go down, and I'm going to go slow for my friends with the vertigo. This is our digital textbook that is growing, and you have world building part one. And if you scroll a little bit further down, you have world building part two. World building part two is mostly focused on mapping out your world, whereas world building part one is establishing the details. So just as a little sneaky peeky, um, Master Drawn going on with the five W's over here. Um, oh, maybe I broke it up because Master Dawn talks a lot. I'm not even gonna lie to you. Sorry, beep. So while you're establishing the five W's, if you come down here, I believe this is where he talks about, yep, there it is. I'm like, I had to break it up because he had a lot to say. And I'm the curator of this book. So, yeah, this is where all the details of world building can be found. And if you are, for whatever reason, not necessarily a member on Storyteller Planet and just want a little freebie, if you still go to focus mode, and you go to fundamentals, because I don't think we have enough articles yet to do a world building one. In here, there's a few different resources about story. I'm trying to find it without scrolling really quickly. Um, so the three pillars of society to focus on when world building, why world building is so hard and how to make it easy, and the essentials of world building. So there's a few options. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, and the comment box wherever you find us is not, your jam, because I know comments can be scary, and you are part of the support squad, you can go into the Mythical Manuscript Guild. I believe also if you are a Fantasy Island fiction reader, you have access to the guild as well, because, it's always nice to dabble and have peers to talk to about storytelling and such. But what is the take-home assignment? So you this is from last week. At least I'm thoroughly convinced it is. Well, if you didn't do that, you should definitely go do that. That is so funny and low-key embarrassing because you need to define the five W's of your story. Spell story correctly. That is hilarious. You can tell that the takeover is definitely messing with all of us. And just because I want you to be able to have things in a concise manner for screenshot ability, huzzah. Oh my goodness. What are we doing next month? If I survive that long. Point of view, audience intimacy, and two types of storytelling language. And if this is going too slow or not giving you enough information, like I said before, fundamentals 101, not this. But if you go to focus mode and go to storytelling fundamentals, it is a growing catalog of information that is basically what we are speeding through in fast-paced fundamentals. So definitely check it out. And that is all I have for you guys today. So, yeah, I will see you next month. Stay well, celebrate because it is the month of pride for many a thing, and I will see you in July. Until then.